This is Texans TV. Texans Extra Points is sponsored by BHP and by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Houston Texans, and by your Houston area Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas.
We are ready to rock at NRG Stadium. Watt gets him down this time. JJ with the sack. Rock and roll. Touchdown, Deshaun Watson.
The time is now, dear friends. This is Texans Extra Points, and I am your host, Drew Dougherty. We've got a fantastic show for you today because, look who it is. Sean Pendergast joins us. You hear him on the Texans pre- and post-game shows. You hear him Monday through Friday on Sports Radio 610 in the mornings, and you write a bang-up column for the Houston Press. We're going to solve all the problems of the world today?
We're going to try to, the Texans at least.
Let's do that. Let's do that. We're going to get into many, many things, but we start like we always do with the Red Diamond Iced Tea quick hits of the week. It's sort of the news of the week, and start with the offense. Deshaun Watson and company haven't played the way they'd like. They are still optimistic, however, and Watson was asked about what exactly this offensive ID really is.
We want to be balanced. I mean, we want to run, we want to pass, we want to do all the things that we need to do. Get on the same page and make sure we're on the same rhythm. So we're building that week to week and building that chemistry, and we're just where we want to be, and it's just going to continue to grow and get better.
And as we've heard all week long, the Watt brothers going to play in the game together for the first time. J.J. Watt on the Texans side, and Derek and T.J. over for Pittsburgh. A momentous occasion. It's the second time in 93 years that three brothers have played in an NFL game. And J.J., to say the very least, is very excited.
It's unbelievable, and it truly is incredible. I mean, just to have all of us, playing at Wisconsin was really cool. Just to have all of us playing in the NFL was really cool. To play against another brother was cool. Now to have all of us on the field at the same time in the same game, it really doesn't get any better than that. It's incredible.
And how about this Pittsburgh Steeler defense and offense? They're a mighty task after going through the buzzsaw that was the Chiefs, who are the reigning Super Bowl champs, and the Ravens, who piled up 14 wins a year ago. Pittsburgh, certainly no slouch either.
Very, very consistent defense. They do what they do. I mean, they're very good at it, whether it's base defense or nickel defense. They have guys that can rush, obviously TJ and Bud Dupree, but, the inside guys can rush. The DBs can rush. I mean, the linebackers can blitz. I mean, they all have an ability to get to the quarterback. So it's a very difficult defense to go against.
So Pittsburgh awaits. Let's get into it right off the bat. Offensively, what's the one thing the Texans got to change and got to do better?
The offensive line needs to play smarter. This was supposed to be the fulcrum. This is supposed to be the foundation that was not only going to help carry the Texans through the season, but especially the early part of the season, where they're trying to, Tim Kelly and Bill O'Brien, assimilate all these new parts that they brought in at the skill positions with Brandin Cooks and with Randall Cobb and David Johnson. They made a big deal about how the 5 starters coming back for the first time in the O'Brien era was going to really help push this team forward. And the offensive line obviously did some good things last year. There were some areas that they can improve in. I think the most disconcerting thing is the one thing they did real well last year was pass block. This year they looked really confused up front those first couple games, and they are not stepping down in weight class when it comes to the type of pass rush they're going to see this Sunday. So I think that's probably the most disappointing thing to me so far. A lot of the things are very fixable. They look like mental errors, not physical errors. There's plenty of talent on that offensive line, but they've got to get their act together.
Okay,
sure.
And then on the flip side, what are you most encouraged about offensively for the Texans so far? It's been 2 games, but what do you like?
Jordan Akins. Jordan Akins is a guy who flashed a lot during camp. I was fortunate enough to be at most of the practices and at the scrimmage, and he was a guy I felt like every time I was calling into the station to do my updates on who looked good and who wasn't practicing this and that, I was always giving glowing reports on how Jordan Akins looked at practice on given days. He had a lot of volume in the last game against Baltimore, not as much volume in the initial game against the Chiefs, but he scored a touchdown and had a really nice run after catch. If they are able to assimilate a tight end into this offense that is a plus level productivity guy, that's a dimension I don't think a lot of people were counting on. this season. So I think Jordan Aiken's probably the most encouraging thing to me.
Yeah, and it's been interesting because what they did in the red zone last year, really inside the 10 last year with Fells as part of that's kind of carried over. We saw another touchdown to him against the Ravens. So the passing game, we've heard, and we heard from Randall Cobb in May. We heard from him at the start of training camp, and we heard from him about a week ago. To paraphrase, he said, it's going to take time because of chemistry. We don't have OTAs, we don't have preseason games, and so on and so on and so on. Well, you're at game 3 now. Chemistry got to get better. We heard from Deshaun earlier in the show, but where do you see that progressing as far as all these new targets and all these targets that you're still trying to assimilate in Will Fuller, Kenny Stills, and those tight ends that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I think the first 2 opponents have done a really good job of taking things away down the field.
Yeah.
And chemistry or no chemistry, when they're scheming against you in a way that's taking away what I think people thought the forte of this offense was going to be, which was stretching the field with Fuller and Cooks. You know, I don't know that that's a chemistry thing or something where the Texans are just going to need to figure out a way to get the defense on its heels a little bit and open up some of that deep threat in the passing game. So I think that's one. You know, look, Cooks has had a big game in the second game. Fuller had a big game in the first game. Fuller's been here forever. They've got chemistry already. I really would like to see Randall Cobb. I know he had 5 catches in the last game against the Ravens, but really get some of those important catches that are moving the chains early in the game. The Texans have really struggled early in games, and I know we're going to talk about that. I think this is where they missed DeAndre Hopkins, quite honestly. You know, those third and manageable situations where you knew you could go to him and he was going to be moving the chains. Cobb needs to be that guy for this offense. And so I think, you know, Cooks, it looks like there's a little something going now with him and Deshaun. Cobb is the one that we really need to see help, especially this weekend, because I think it's going to be a lot of quick hit stuff with that pass rush of the Steelers.
Yeah, you're going into the teeth of maybe the best pass rush all season long that you're going to see. All right. We've got to do some X's and O's, and for that, we turn to our good pal, John Harris. He used to do a radio show with this guy to my left, but Johnny's got this week's version of the Telestrator. And speaking of Brandin Cooks, it's a deep completion to Cooks from last week's game.
Welcome to Texas Telestrator, presented by BMW. I am your host, John Harris, football analyst and sideline reporter for your Houston Texans, and it's time to look at the impact that Brandin Cooks can have on opposing defenses. And this happened, I believe, in the second quarter. Let's go to the surface, powered by Microsoft. And you'll see here the Texans come out in 12 personnel. This is one of the things they like to do. 2 tight ends, 1 back. So 1 and 2 makes 12. That's 12 personnel. Now, Jordan is going to go across in motion here and set up right here next to Laramie. So it essentially balances up the formation. Even though he's off the ball, it's essentially a balanced set here. I'm not going to worry about that too much. What we're going to look at here is, what does play action do to these guys up here, and how does that impact what these guys are doing here? So, Sean sends Jordan in motion, and now we're going to get an outside zone fake. So what that's going to do, hard flow, fast flow here. That's important because Brandin Cooks is eventually going to run right over there. So getting them here is hugely important, because when Deshaun then sets up, he's going to have Brandin Cooks available down the field. So there's Deshaun with a good ball fake, and look at where these guys are. Look at all this. Look at all that. In. And that's going to create trouble, because you now essentially have 1 on 1s right there. And you got Brandin, who's got all kinds of field here to work with. So with this guy's leverage here, Brandon's already got him beat. It's just a matter of, does Brandin want to go there? Does he want to cut it off here? Or does he want to split the middle right there? That's all what Brandin has to try and figure out on this route. When he gets Jimmy Smith to turn, he knows, okay, he knows this guy's going to probably be able to speed turn there. And he knows that these guys are heading back this way. So now, as he's going full speed, he's got to assess, don't come too shallow, don't go too deep. If you split the difference, you'll be wide open over the top of these guys and in front of this guy. And that's exactly what happens. He runs to that space knowing that Smith can't get there fast enough and that these guys have to come too far to get him. And Deshaun just drops a beautiful ball in there, right there. Excellent stuff there by Brandin Cooks, reading what the Ravens were doing in the secondary. Great ball fake, excellent execution up front with Deshaun Watson, the offensive line, and the tight ends. That is the result, a 38-yard bomb to Brandin Cooks. Need more of that in the future.
Extra blockers, fake to Johnson, throw in the end zone, caught by Fells, touchdown! He beats Levine. And the Texans are on the board, 10-yard touchdown pass by Watson.
Next-gen stats powered by AWS are always very, very interesting. You know, on that Deshaun Watson touchdown pass to Darren Fells last week, he threw it when he was on the run. And for the record, he was running 8 miles per hour. It's a pretty specific mile per hour to put on that. But that's the 9th touchdown pass he's thrown on the run since 2019. That's tied for most in the NFL with Jameis Winston.
We're tired just hearing 8 miles an hour.
We're going very deep as far as the details here, Sean Pendergast. So, hey, he's tied for first in the NFL.
There you go.
Running and throwing the ball for touchdowns. So let's talk about this defense, though. Back here on Texans Extra Points, we want to ask this question. What is more important right now? Improving the pass rush or getting better run defense-wise?
Yeah, I think it's getting to the passer. I think it's improving the pass rush, and here's why. I don't know that this is going to be, as currently constructed, I don't know that this is going to be a defense that just play to play is getting teams off the field, a bunch of 3-and-outs, real stout up front, which is kind of what they've been up until the middle of last year. They've been really good against the run until the middle of last season, until they weren't good against the run. I think this is going to be a defense that's going to need to be good situationally and get off the field in spots. And I think the way that you do that is to get those big negative plays, get those sacks, put teams behind the chains. It's more of a passing league now too. You know what I mean? I think so many coaches pay lip service to establishing the run, but it's a passing league right now. It's a quarterback's league. So I think if I had to pick one where they can improve, I think I would be cool. And I think Anthony Weaver's even said this. You know, it's not about giving up 150 or 160 yards in the rushing game. It's about making the impact plays. He cites turnovers, but I'll throw sacks into that as well, or getting after the passer, maybe forcing fumbles. Those are the plays that swing things. And I think that's how this team is built. This team is going to be built for the defense. If the defense can be middle of the pack average, then your hope is that you've constructed an elite offense around an elite quarterback.
Yeah, you got to get the ball. I mean, takeaways is something we've hammered on the show, not just this year, but all through the entirety of the show over the last 4, 5, 6 years. One guy off the edge who's really looked pretty darn good when he's played has been Jacob Martin. You think the snap count's going to rise for that guy? Because he's averaging about 20 snaps per game, and you wonder, why not more of him?
I think it needs to. And I watched him. I focused in on him a couple times during the Baltimore game, Drew, and he you know, he wasn't Whitney Merciless, veteran type, solid edge, hold the edge guy against the run, but he did make some plays in the run game.
Good stuff happens when he's in there.
Yeah, and I think last year it was tough to have him on the field in non-obvious passing situations, and we saw the Chiefs take advantage of that in the playoff game a lot, getting him in matchups where he was forced into coverage and things like that. But boy, he got a lot of praise during the preseason from both Anthony Weaver and Bill O'Brien, unprompted praise. And it was correct. I was, like I mentioned, I was out there watching, and so I saw he was flashing out at practice. He looked good in that Ravens game in plays that were not normal Jacob Martin down and distance situations. And to me, I think, and maybe that helps Whitney get going a little bit too, is to have somebody sort of, you know, ease that burden on him, because Whitney's having a tough time getting out of the gates here too. I think Jacob Martin, to answer your question, I think he needs to be part of this a little bit more.
You know, and we didn't even mention J.J. Watt. We're going to do that in the next segment. But J.J. Watt, for a little Texans trivia, he's now got 98 career sacks. He's tied with Joey Porter, Pittsburgh Steelers legend, for 35th all-time. Later on, we're going to give you the answer. Who's number 34th on that list? This is Texans Extra Points.
Roethlisberger puts the leg down. Little pressure, scrambling out to the left side, and Mario sacks him back at the 31-yard line. Mario Williams with the sack on Roethlisberger, his third of the year.
Welcome back to Texas Extra Points. You know, that Texans trivia question we just had. JJ passed about 6 players, 6 all-time greats on the list. One of them was Mario Williams, and Mario Williams had himself a day against the Steelers back in 2011. That was one of 2 sacks for Super Mario back when the Texans beat the Steelers. Drew Dougherty, Sean Pendergast here on Texans Extra Points, coming at you from the Ford Studios. Let's talk a little bit about JJ. He's going to play against his brothers, but JJ Watt has been a constant this season in a good way. Looks like the JJ Watt we all know and love from all those all-pro seasons he's churned out. How does the burden, you talked about burden on other guys, how does the burden get eased on him, and what sort of burden is he on offenses right now?
Yeah, well, you're right. When he's in there, he looks like the old JJ. His snap count was down against the Ravens. I actually asked him about that on his Zoom call this week. So I was curious if that was something that was by design, maybe dialing him back, because if they did, you look at the stats at the end of the game, you go, well, that worked then, because he finished the game with 2 sacks, 2 TFLs, a few QB hits. Maybe that's the formula. Turns out he was nursing a bit of a groin injury, which he said he feels fine now, so nothing to get too worried about. I guess my concern is the same as everybody's is for JJ, is that he's 31 years old. We know what the injury history has looked like the last few years. And he is being asked to maybe handle a bigger burden with this defense than he ever has in his career. But he's up for the challenge. Look, I just hope this team starts winning games, because JJ is the one guy, when they lose these games, I really feel for JJ Watt, because he's the guy that's getting closer to the end in this whole thing. You want JJ Watt to be on a team that's experiencing big-time success against teams like the Ravens and the Chiefs, and like the Steelers this weekend with his 2 brothers there.
Yeah, with his 2 brothers there. And let's talk about the quarterback that they're going to go after, Big Ben Roethlisberger. He's done this before. He's won a Super Bowl. He knows how to get after it and win games. How much of a threat is he still at quarterback? How much tread is still on that tire in your eyes?
These old quarterbacks are amazing. Yeah. You know, these quarterback is getting to be like Supreme Court judge when it comes to a job. You know, with Roethlisberger, Rivers, Rodgers. I've watched both their games this year so far. He looks like the old Big Ben, you know, coming off that elbow surgery. Never a guy who's just with a missile rocket for an arm, but a guy who's got great touch on everything. He's able to make all kinds of throws into, you know, just dropping it in the bucket, tight spaces. And he's a guy who just is really slippery when it comes to being able to stay up. He's big, but he's kind of cagey. So he looks a lot like the old Big Ben to me right now.
Yeah.
You know?
And TJ Watt for the Steelers defense is playing a lot like his brother. It's a different position, outside linebacker, but he is the impactful player that we've seen JJ Watt to be. I don't know what was in the water up there in Wisconsin with the Watt family, because Derek's also on the team, but how much of a threat is TJ Watt?
I think they're all threats. I think that's the biggest thing to me, is that, I mean, TJ's a great player, obviously. It makes a lot of great individual impactful plays. He's coming off of a Player of the Week performance in Week 2, Defensive Player of the Week in the AFC. To me, it's just the waves of players they can bring at you. You know, TJ Watt on one side, Bud Dupree on the other, Cameron Hayward and Stephon Tuitt on the inside. I mean, that's about as tough as it gets that I can remember the Texans seeing in a long, long time. And they've played some really good football teams these last few years. And then you add in Minkah Fitzpatrick on the back end, things they can do with their linebackers. They're just so athletic, and O'Brien touched on it. He's like, they can blitz you from any number of places.
Yeah, they sure can. They're very talented. It's going to be a test. And speaking of tests, it plays perfectly into our Gatorade players to watch, because yours is somebody that's going to have to deal with that pass rush, isn't it?
Yeah, Laramie Tunsil's my player to watch. And I know, and Laramie's actually, I think, when it comes to the standard on the offensive line so far through 2 games, he's been fine. Yeah. He and Nick Martin have been okay. The other spots have been, they need to step up those other spots. But Laramie is the anchor on that offensive line. He's the one that's probably going to see quite a bit of TJ Watt or Bud Dupree throughout the day. And this is a game where you got to be protecting Deshaun Watson's blind side. He's going to get hit some in this game. You got to protect that blind side. And so Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah, and mine kind of plays in with yours, my Gatorade player to watch, David Johnson, because he's going to be called upon in pass pro. But you need to get the yardage that you got out of him, and maybe more that you saw against Kansas City, because the more yardage you're getting from him, the more time you're on the field, the less time their Pittsburgh offense is on the field. And I think good things are going to happen, because we saw one of those guys in August that was really, really impressive was David Johnson.
No question.
With that, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we've got keys to the game. This is Texans Extra Points.
Texans Extra Points has been sponsored by BHP and by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Houston Texans, by Amagi Bank, official business bank of the Houston Texans, and by Jameson. Tailgate like a Texan with Jameson Irish Whiskey.
J.J. Watt is tied for 35th on the all-time sacks list. When he gets 2 more, he'll have 100 sacks in his career. And that'll tie him for 34th all-time. That's the question. Who was 34th? Since this guy grew up in New England, I've got former Patriot Andre Tippett. That's the answer. Yeah,
Andre Tippett. Liked to do karate. That was his hand-eye or jiu-jitsu, one of the MMA
And
arts.
that just spawned a long off-camera talk about Cobra Kai.
It
That's
did.
neither here nor there. We're going to talk about First Community Credit Union keys to the game. What are 2 keys that the Texans need to do to pick up a win, Sean?
Yeah, I think this is one that I feel like it's a weekly thing because the Texans seem to struggle every week scoring touchdowns on opening drives, but they need to come out fast, you know, and it's not to take the crowd out of the game, obviously, because there is no crowd in the stadium. They need to do it for their own benefit and get an early lead. And I know they got an early lead against the Chiefs, but I'm talking about on the first drive. On opening drives since the beginning of 2018, in the regular season with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, that's 33 starts. They've scored 1 touchdown since the beginning of 2018, and they're averaging 3.5 yards per play on those drives. They need to get off to a fast start. It needs to start on their opening drive offensively. My second key is I think this is a game where you can kind of unleash the hounds a little bit defensively. Unlike Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, while I described Big Ben as slippery and slightly mobile, he's not mobile like those other two where if you blitz and you know you don't get there, or he's not a guy who's going to escape the pocket and then hurt you with a 25-yard run.
Not easy to bring down.
But he'll be there when you blitz. And I think Anthony Weaver still has an advantage with a little bit of mystery surrounding him as the defensive coordinator. This offense is different than the previous 2. Show him something different. He'll throw you one each game too. So use some sort of games to get Ben Roethlisberger into a mistake.
So perfect. You lead me right into. I'm going to bang this drum until it happens, and then I'll stop banging this drum. But let's go +2 and get 2 more takeaways than you turn the ball over.
A good one.
Okay, so +2. And how about Stills and Cobb? Let's get them integrated a little bit more in the offense and see if we can blow the Steelers up and get win number 1. Hey, it's always fun having you on. Absolutely. Glad you're back in studio because of COVID. We had to do things remotely via Zoom. I'm happy that you're back with us.
Good to be back.
And we're happy that you watched Texans Extra Points. Do it again next week, same time, same place. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you then. Until then, go Texans. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.